There's something terrifying about the woods at night. No streetlights, no people, no way to know what's standing just beyond the reach of your flashlight. Most people think camping horror stories are exaggerated until they experience something for themselves. Because deep in isolated forests, abandoned campgrounds, and remote mountain trails, people have vanished without explanation. Some were found days later, others were never seen again. And the worst part? Many of them reported the exact same things before disappearing. Footsteps outside their tents, voices calling from the darkness, and the feeling that something was watching them from the trees. Tonight, you're going to hear 3 terrifying camping horror stories that people claim really happened. Stories so disturbing, they ruined camping forever for the people who survived them. So before you plan your next trip into the wilderness, make sure you keep the fire burning, because once the forest goes silent, you may not be alone anymore. I used to camp all the time. Not the fake campground kind with bathrooms and families everywhere. I mean real camping. Deep woods. No signal. No people. Just trees, darkness, and whatever lives out there when nobody's watching. After what happened 3 years ago, I haven't stepped into a forest since. It started when my best friend Tyler convinced me to go camping in northern Montana during early October. Cold weather. Empty trails. Perfect conditions if you wanted peace and quiet. That should been the first warning. We drove almost 4 hours into the mountains before the GPS completely died. Tyler loved that. He kept joking about how we were officially off the grid. By sunset, we found a clearing surrounded by massive pine trees. No campsites, no roads, just endless forest in every direction. Looking back now, it felt wrong immediately. Too quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing, but we ignored it. We set up our tent, built a fire, cooked cheap hot dogs, and spent hours talking about old high school memories. For a while, it actually felt peaceful. Then the sun disappeared. The temperature dropped fast. The woods turned pitch black beyond the firelight. That's when Tyler noticed it first. "Do you hear that?" I stopped talking. At first, nothing, then crunch. A slow footstep somewhere in the darkness behind us. We both turned toward the trees. Another crunch, then silence. Tyler laughed nervously. Probably a deer. I wanted to believe that. Around midnight, we climbed into the tent. The fire outside had almost died, leaving only a faint orange glow through the fabric walls. I was just starting to fall asleep when I heard it again. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Slow footsteps circling the tent. I opened my eyes immediately. Tyler was already awake. "You hear it too," he whispered. The footsteps continued. Not running, not stumbling, walking, slowly, carefully, like someone was studying us. The sound circled the tent once, then again and again. Every few seconds the steps would stop completely, right beside our heads, then continue moving. Neither of us spoke. I remember staring at the thin tent wall, thinking about how one knife slash could open the entire thing. The footsteps suddenly stopped near Tyler's side. Then we heard breathing. Deep, wet, human breathing. Only inches away. Tyler grabbed the flashlight with shaking hands. "What if someone's messing with us?" I didn't answer, because I already knew something was wrong. No laughter, no voices, no branches snapping. Whoever, or whatever, was outside moved too carefully. Tyler suddenly unzipped the tent and aimed the flashlight outside. Nothing, just trees, fog, darkness. The footsteps stopped instantly. For a few seconds, the woods were completely silent again. Then Tyler zipped the tent shut. Crunch. The footsteps started again immediately, circling us. Slower this time. I felt sick. Hours passed like that. No sleep. Just footsteps. Circling, watching, waiting. At around 2 a.m., something changed. The footsteps stopped completely beside my head. Then, scratch. I froze. Scratch, scratch, underneath us. Something was dragging its fingers beneath the tent floor. Tyler actually whimpered. The scratching moved slowly from one side of the tent to the other, like someone crawling underneath us. I could hear dirt shifting beneath the fabric. Then came 3 slow knocks directly under my sleeping bag. Knock, knock, knock. Tyler grabbed his phone and quietly started recording audio. Neither of us moved. Then the whispering started. At first it sounded too faint to understand. Just soft mumbling outside the tent. But it kept getting closer, circling with the footsteps, whispering non-stop. I couldn't make out words, but I knew it sounded human. That somehow made it worse. Around 4 a.m., Tyler finally snapped. "We're leaving," he whispered. I nodded instantly. We started throwing things into our backpacks as quietly as possible. The footsteps had stopped again. That silence felt worse than the noise. Tyler reached for the zipper. Before he could open it, boom! Something slammed onto the tent from above. The entire tent collapsed inward violently. Tyler screamed. I saw the fabric press down inches from my face, like someone's full body weight landed on top of us. We kicked and shoved our way out blindly. I barely remember grabbing my shoes. We sprinted through the trees toward the car, hearing branches crack somewhere behind us. Not walking anymore, running. Tyler unlocked the car so fast he dropped the keys twice. The second we got inside, he slammed the locks down. Then the headlights turned on, and we saw it. Standing between the trees roughly 30 feet away, tall, unnaturally tall, completely motionless. The headlights barely reached its body, but I remember the shape clearly. Long arms, pale face, no movement whatsoever, just staring directly at us. Tyler threw the car into reverse, so hard we nearly hit a tree. As we sped down the dirt road, I looked back once. The figure never chased us. It never moved. It just stood there, watching. We drove until sunrise without speaking. Neither of us ever went back for the rest of our gear. For months, we tried convincing ourselves it was some psycho living in the woods. That explanation worked. Until Tyler checked the audio recording. He called me at almost midnight. I'll never forget his voice. He sounded terrified. He told me to listen carefully near the end, so I did. At first, it was exactly what we remembered. Footsteps, breathing, scratching. Then the final minute started, and through the static, a whisper, clear enough to understand, right beside the tent. "Don't leave." Then another voice whispered something even quieter. A voice Tyler swears was coming from underneath us. "You stayed before, Matrotimal. My girlfriend Rachel and I thought we'd found the perfect hidden campground." That's the part that still bothers me, because looking back, I don't think we were ever supposed to find it. This happened in Oregon during late summer. We'd been driving for hours trying to find a quiet place near a lake where we could spend the weekend away from people. Every official campsite was packed, families, RV campers, music blasting everywhere. Rachel hated crowds, so we kept driving deeper into the mountains until we found an old wooden sign pointing towards something called Black Pine Campground. The sign looked ancient, half-rotted wood, faded paint. It honestly looked abandoned. Rachel laughed and said, "Perfect." We followed the dirt road for another 20 minutes before the trees finally opened up around a massive, dark lake. The campground sat right beside the water, and it was completely empty. No cars, no campers, no lights, nothing. There was a small ranger station near the entrance, but the windows were boarded up and the door hung slightly open. The entire place felt frozen in time. We should left right there. Instead, we parked near the lake and started unloading our gear. At first, it actually felt amazing. The silence, cold air coming off the water, no people around for miles. By sunset, we had a fire going, and Rachel was already taking pictures for social media. That's when she noticed the other tent, far across the campground, near the tree line. Small, dark-colored, no lights inside. I remember feeling relieved. At least we weren't completely alone. "Maybe they just went hiking," Rachel said. "Maybe." But something about that tent bothered me immediately. It looked wrong somehow. Too still, no movement, no sound, not even a flashlight. As darkness settled in, the campground became unbelievably quiet. No bugs, no frogs near the lake, nothing. Just wind moving through the trees. Around midnight, Rachel shook me awake. "Do you hear that?" I listened carefully. Clang. A metallic sound echoed somewhere outside, slow, sharp, like metal dragging across rocks. Clang, clang, clang. The sound moved through the campground at a walking pace. Rachel whispered, "Someone's out there." I looked through the tent window toward the distant campsite. The other tent was still there, but now it looked closer, not by much, maybe 20 feet closer than before. I told myself we'd just remembered wrong. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The metallic dragging continued for almost an hour, then suddenly stopped. The next morning we tried laughing it off, probably another camper messing around. But then we noticed our cooler. Half the food was gone, not scattered. not destroyed by animals. Missing. Rachel immediately blamed raccoons until she noticed the footprints. Bare human footprints, in the mud around our tent, small, thin, deep enough to show whoever made them had been standing there for a while, watching us. Rachel wanted to leave immediately. I should listened. Instead, I convinced her to stay one more night. Big mistake. That evening, clouds rolled over the mountains and covered the entire campground in fog. The lake disappeared behind thick white mist. Even the trees looked blurry. Before getting inside the tent, I looked toward the distant campsite again. My stomach dropped. The other tent had moved closer. There was no question anymore. It now stood less than 50 feet away near the edge of our campsite, still dark, still silent. Rachel saw it too. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then she quietly said, "That wasn't there before." I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The campground was freezing cold. The fog muffled every sound. I aimed the flashlight toward the strange tent. Nothing. No movement. No person standing nearby. Just a small dark tent sitting alone in the mist. I walked halfway toward it before Rachel begged me to come back. Something deep inside me suddenly agreed with her. We locked ourselves inside the tent and stayed awake. At exactly 2:13 a.m., clang. The metallic sound returned. Much closer this time. Clang, clang, clang. Something slowly circled our tent, dragging metal across the gravel. Rachel started crying quietly beside me. The footsteps were slow and uneven, like someone limping. I held my flashlight tightly, waiting for the sound to stop. Instead, it stopped directly outside the tent entrance. Silence, then breathing, slow, wheezing right outside. Rachel whispered, "Don't open it." But I already grabbed the zipper. I don't know why. Maybe panic, maybe anger. Maybe I just wanted it over with. I yanked the tent open and pointed the flashlight outside. At first I saw nothing but fog. Then the beam landed on someone standing near the trees. A man, tall and painfully thin, barefoot, wearing filthy clothes, soaked dark with water. But it was his face I remember most. He was smiling. Not normal smiling. Too wide, too still, like he'd been practicing how to look human. The metal object hung from his hand, a rusted crowbar dragging against rocks. Neither of us moved. Then, slowly, the man tilted his head and whispered something I barely heard. "You weren't supposed to stay here," Rachel screamed. The man suddenly stepped backward into the fog and disappeared completely. Not ran, not walked, gone. We packed everything in less than 2 minutes and sped out of the campground without looking back. As we passed the ranger's station near the entrance, Rachel noticed a faded sign nailed beside the broken door. Most of the letters were damaged, but part of it was still readable. Campground closed. Missing person investigation. We drove straight to the nearest gas station and told the clerk what happened. The second I mentioned Black Pine Campground, his face changed. He told us the place had been abandoned for years, after multiple campers disappeared near the lake. I asked him about the other tent. He looked confused. Then he said something I still think about constantly. There are no campsites left out there anymore. Rangers tore them all down. Penitent. The locals warned us before we even unloaded the truck. That should have been enough. But when you're 22 years old, traveling with friends, and trying to film the perfect camping adventure, you don't listen to old stories. You laugh at them. There were 4 of us. Me, my cousin Nate, a guy named Trevor, and Trevor's younger brother, Eli. We drove into the Appalachian Mountains during peak autumn because Trevor wanted footage for his outdoor YouTube channel. The place looked unreal. Massive orange forests, fog drifting through the mountains, miles of empty trails. Perfect during the daytime. But the deeper we drove, the stranger people acted around us. At a tiny gas station near the mountain road, an old woman asked where we were headed. Trevor proudly told her we planned to camp near Hollow Ridge Trail. The woman immediately stopped, smiling. She looked directly at us and quietly said, "Don't stay on that mountain after dark." Trevor laughed. The woman didn't. Before leaving, she added one more sentence. "If you hear screaming, no you didn't." At the time, we thought she was just crazy. By sunset, we reached the trail area and set up camp beside a narrow clearing surrounded by steep woods. No other campers, no cabins, nothing. The air felt colder up there than it should have, like winter hiding inside the trees. We spent the evening drinking cheap beer around the fire, while Trevor filmed everything for his channel. Around midnight, Eli suddenly looked toward the forest. "You guys hear that?" At first, nothing. Then it came again. A scream, far away somewhere deeper in the mountains, high-pitched, human. The sound echoed through the trees before abruptly cutting off. Nobody spoke. A minute later, another scream echoed from a completely different direction. Closer this time. Trevor stood up immediately. "Someone's hurt." Nate shook his head. "No way." That sounded wrong. Then the screaming came again. Longer, desperate, like someone begging for help. Eli looked terrified. Trevor grabbed a flashlight. "We can't ignore that." I didn't want to go. Every instinct told me to stay near the fire. But none of us wanted to look scared in front of the others. So we followed Trevor into the woods. The deeper we walked, the stranger the mountain became. No animal sounds, no wind. Even our footsteps sounded muffled somehow. Trevor carried a walkie-talkie clipped to his backpack, while Nate carried the second one. At first, all we heard was static. Then a voice suddenly crackled through. "Help me!" We all froze. The voice sounded distorted, weak, like someone whispering through broken speakers. Trevor answered immediately. "Where are you?" Static filled the radio. Then, over here. The voice came from somewhere ahead of us. We followed it, uphill through thick trees and wet leaves. That's when Nate found the clothing. A ripped red jacket hanging from a branch. Fresh tears covered the fabric. Below it sat muddy footprints leading deeper into the woods. Trevor looked excited now, like we were about to rescue someone. I just felt sick. The screaming started again. Except this time, it sounded much closer. "Too close," Eli whispered. "Why does it sound like it's moving?" He was right. The screams kept changing direction impossibly fast. 1 second ahead of us, then somewhere behind us, then far off to the left. Like the mountain itself was throwing the sound around. The walkie-talkie suddenly exploded with static so loud we all jumped. Then a new voice came through, clearer this time. "Don't let it see you." Nate immediately grabbed Trevor's shoulder. "We need to go back. Right now." Before Trevor could answer, sir, Eli screamed. We turned around instantly. He was gone. 1 second he'd been directly behind us. The next, nothing. Just darkness between trees. We shouted his name over and over. No response. Trevor panicked and started running through the woods, searching wildly with his flashlight. Then we heard Eli's voice. "Help!" Somewhere downhill. Trevor sprinted toward it immediately. We chased after him through branches and rocks, while Eli kept screaming for help. But something felt horribly wrong. His voice never sounded out of breath. Never sounded like he was moving. Just repeating the same terrified scream over and over from the darkness. Finally, Trevor stopped near a group of massive trees. "Ellie!" Silence. Then Eli's voice answered softly from deeper in the woods. "I'm here." Trevor stepped forward. Nate suddenly grabbed him hard. No, I'll never forget Nate's face. Pure terror. Then we heard it. Another Eli voice. Behind us. "Help me!" We turned slowly. The voice had come from the darkness directly behind our group. But nobody was there. Trevor started backing away. The walkie-talkie crackled again. Then Eli's voice whispered through the speaker. It learned my voice. At that exact second, something screamed beside us. Not human, not animal, loud enough to shake the trees. Trevor dropped the flashlight and we ran blindly downhill through the forest. Branches tore at our faces while that screaming echoed behind us over and over, sometimes sounding human, sometimes sounding like dozens of voices at once. We didn't stop running until we reached the truck. Eli never came back. Police searched the mountain for 5 days. Dogs tracked his scent deep into the woods before suddenly losing it completely. No body, no footprints, nothing. Trevor deleted his YouTube channel 2 weeks later. Nate refuses to speak about that night at all. And me? I still think about the final thing we heard before escaping the mountain. As we slammed the truck doors shut, Eli's voice echoed softly from the trees nearby. Only this time, it was laughing. Datarant. Some places in the wilderness feel wrong the moment you arrive. The silence, the feeling of being watched. The sense that something deep in the forest already knows you're there. And maybe that feeling exists for a reason. Because the terrifying part about these stories isn't just the darkness. It's the fact that none of these people ever found out what was really out there. Something circled that tent all night. Something moved through an abandoned campground that should have been empty. And somewhere high in those mountains, something learned how to sound human. Maybe the woods hide predators. Maybe they hide people. Or maybe there are things out there we were never supposed to understand. So the next time you go camping and you hear footsteps outside your tent, or distant screaming somewhere deep in the trees, you might want to remember these stories, because sometimes the safest thing you can do in the forest is pretend you heard nothing at all. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, leave a comment sharing the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you while camping. And if you're brave enough for more terrifying true horror stories, subscribe and turn on notifications. But until next time, stay out of the dark.